All right, good evening, guys. The reason I brought you guys in to talk about our 10th grade ACT and writing scores over the past year. This is going to be something that can help us moving forward to increase our scores. Before we get started, I want to talk to you guys about some of our makeup at Gadsden City. We have a faculty made up of more than 145 members. We have one main principal. We have 6 assistant principals. We have 1 special ed educational specialist. We have 4 guidance counselors for each grade level. Next, I'm going to talk about, so you can get make sure we understand our demographics of our kids that we're dealing with. We have 47% of our kids are African American, 33% are white American, 18% are Spanish American. We have 1% that's Asian. We have 1% that's other or none. Out of those kids, 58% of those kids are free or reduced lunch, with 42% being students who are paid lunch. Next slides. This is getting into some of our meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about. Pre-ACT facts. What is the pre-ACT designed for? The pre-ACT is a multiple choice test that prepares our students for the real ACT test. It is designed for our high school, mainly our high school sophomore students. It is meant to measure our students' ability for college readiness courses throughout high school. It can be used as scores its scores can be used to anticipate how well they will do as 11th graders and 12th graders as they get ready to take the real ACT test. Next is some of our stats from past years and what we scored on each category. There's 4 categories. There's English, math, reading, and science. The benchmarks for English is 18. The benchmark for math is 22. The benchmark for reading is also 22. And science is 23. In 2018, we had 43% that benchmarked in English. In math, we had 14%. Reading, we had 24%. And science, we had 13%. 17.5 was the average score for English. For math, 17.6 was the average score. For reading, 18.7. And for science, 18.6. As we go down to 2019, we had 43% that also benchmarked, with 17.6 being the average score. For math, we had 19% that benchmarked, with 17.8 being the average score, and we actually jumped up 5%. And then for reading, we had 25%. We actually made an increase of 8, and then our benchmark we had 18.7 was the average score. And in science, we went up 7 points, with our average score being 20% benchmarking, with our average score being 18.3. And our last year tests that are not really final, but these are the numbers. We had 45% that benchmarked in English, so we actually went up. In English, we had 19%, we stayed the same with 17.2 is the average. In reading, we had 26% that benchmarked with 17.7 being the average. In science, we had 19% that benchmarked with 17.9 being the average score.
In what ways the pre-ACT have you seen that helps kids' overall score for the actual ACT test?
Well,
in what ways is that?
They can really, if they're taking serious, they can really use it as a predeterminant for how they will fare on the real ACTs. It's not as long as the real ACT, but it's right there really. I think the actual test has about 35 questions on some of them, well, the pre-ACT has about 35 questions, and the real one has a little bit more. And next, I'm going to show you guys some state what the which we already know what the benchmarks is in English is 18. About 51% benchmarked in English across the state of Alabama. In math, it's 22%. About 35% benchmark was 35% benchmark and across the state of Alabama. In reading, we have 23% that benchmark at over all the high schools. In science, we have 24% that benchmark. Next, we're going to look at how we compare to the state of Alabama. English, last year we was 44%, with the average being 51%. In math, we was 14%, with the average being 23%. In reading, we was 26%, with the average being 35%. In science, we was 17%, with the average being 24%. Next, we're going to look how far we're off. We're only off 6% at being at the average. In math, it's a little bit more. We're 11% off from being at the state average. In reading, we're 6% off. In science, we're 5% off the state average. School attendance, just kind of, I wanted to look at school attendance and go, I went back a little farther, 2017. This is before the new administration. We had over around 53 to 55% that what we considered chronic absence. In 2018, with the new administration, we cut that almost in half to only having 23 to 24% that was chronic absence. In 2019, we also cut that back in half. We only had 13% that was chronic absent. In 2020, which was like this past year, it was a little different. We had around 67% what we would consider remote learners. We had 13% that was in traditional in-person instruction, and we had around 13% that was considered chronic absence. All right, next we're going to look at some areas to celebrate and some areas of concern. Number one, areas to celebrate. Student scores are on the rise in English and reading for 2020. Second reason to celebrate, student scores in English, reading, and science are only 6% or lower from meeting the state average, okay? So that's really good. Areas of concern. We're below average in all four subcategories when we take the ACT. Number two, areas of concern, COVID-19 caused attendance to drop off by over 50%. And when I say that, we went from either remote learning to being chronic absent. Next area of concern would be math. Scores are 11% off from being the state average, which is really, really tough. For this presentation, the reason we're here, our goals, like I said, we're off in all four subcategories, but we're really I want to focus in on science because I think those are the students that are really on the bubble of being at the state average. And the reason we're here to improve the student scores on the science portion of the pre-ACT state average to 23%. Number two, to increase their confidence when they're participating in class. Number three, to improve their attendance. And two, number four, to master their ACT Aspire test skills. All right, here's some present strategies that we're using in our curriculum. Number one, RTI, that's our 3-level intervention strategy. After school training in some areas, mainly in just math and science, math and reading. Number two, assets testing. Number three, teachers meet weekly with our ELL coordinators. And number four, ACT prep class for math and English. All right, new ideas that we want to try to incorporate Edgenuity training across the curriculum. That's where we can either teach in our native, that's where we allow our students to teach in our native language. If they choose to, get the lessons in different instructions, different ways to go about teaching. Number three, ACT prep across all the curriculum. Number four, we want to incorporate more visual learning for our students. Number five, which I think we'll be able to do with no problem, cut virtual numbers out after this year. And then number six, offer after-school training for our parents. Our action plan. Number one, we want to communicate our campus goal clearly to our students' achievement to our faculty and staff members. Number two, we want to work with teacher staff to analyze state assessments and curriculum so we can master it. Number 3, we want to reevaluate our current educational processes and strategies that we use every day in the classroom. And we want to use that by having as many walkthroughs by our administration as possible. Number 4, we want to make time to examine our students' achievement on a regular basis. That's what we're making sure we are always giving our students some type of test, whether it's nonverbal, verbal, to see their mastery level of each thing in science. Next, we want to identify any additional methods that we can go about collecting data to help out make sure learning is occurring. 7, we want to closely monitor our state and federal indicators, determine where our campus ranks amongst the state. 8, we want to provide professional development for our staff members as much as possible. And then last, we want to focus on our students on the bubble. Do anybody have any questions about anything? Because I know I went fairly quick, but I wanted to show you guys where I think we could be headed as we move forward.
What's some of the things y'all may do, like focusing on the other students?
Well, that's where we really concentrate on those students that's right at the state, at the benchmark, and we really make sure we get them over the benchmark to where they can benchmark. But thank you guys for your time, okay?